Beneath the African sun, a shadow slips across the grass. Long legs carry a body built not for brute strength, but for endurance. This is the African wild dog, Lycaon pictus, sometimes called the painted wolf. Its coat is a patchwork of gold, black, and white, no two alike, like fingerprints of the wilderness. Unlike the solitary leopard or the stealthy cheetah, wild dogs live and move as one. Their strength is not in the individual, but in the pack. Scientists studying them in Botswana's Okavango Delta discovered that each hunt is a choreographed performance. One dog leads, another shadows prey from the flank, and others anticipate escape routes. Incredibly, success rates reach over 70%, far higher than lions or cheetahs. This efficiency comes not from power, but from communication soft chirps, squeaks, and high-pitched twittering that bind them together like threads in a net. What makes wild dogs unique is their deep cooperation. Research by Dr. Rosie Woodruff at the Zoological Society of London shows that when pups are too young to hunt, adults bring food back, regurgitating warm meat into eager mouths. No pup is left unfed. This altruism, rare in carnivores, makes them one of nature's most caring predators. But survival is never easy. Lions and hyenas see wild dogs as rivals, often killing them. Disease from domestic dogs, rabies, and distemper has wiped out entire packs. From over 500,000 individuals a century ago, fewer than 6,000 remain in the wild today. Yet when you watch them run, lean bodies stretching across the plain, paws drumming in unison, you glimpse a species honed by millions of years of evolution, a living thread connecting predator and prey, life and death, cooperation and survival. This is the story of the wild dog, a story of endurance, kinship, and survival against odds. The film opens not with a single animal, but with a moving map, a slow pan across Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Soft strings thread under a measured narrator's voice as colored. Ranges bloom yellow for the African wild. Dog Lycaon pictus. Rust for the dhole quone albanus. Sand for the dingo canis lupus dingo. And small, flickering enclaves for the critically endangered. New Guinea's singing dog and the Ethiopian wolf. Our subject is not wild dogs as a vague catch-all. It is a family of social, cursorial hunters whose survival depends on cooperation, a biological theme tested and retested by the last century of field ecology. We set our baseline with the African wild dog, often called the painted dog or painted wolf. Morphologically, Lycaon is defined by for toes per foot no dew claw, hypercarnivory with sheer optimized dentition, and unusually long limbs, a convergence toward endurance hunting. From the air, drone footage follows a pack crossing a mopane savannah. The narrator introduces core data points that will anchor this documentary to evidence. Pack sizes commonly 6 to 20. Historical ranges once spanning most of sub-Saharan Africa. Home ranges varying from under to 100 square kilometers. In resource-rich areas to over 1,000 square kilometers, where prey is sparse. These numbers are not shrugged estimates. They come from decades of radio collar, telemetry, and GPS fixes that reconstruct nightly paths into spider webs of intent. We cut to a field biologist fitting a lightweight GPS. VHF collar. The process follows institutional animal care protocols, induction with a reversible anesthetic, continuous monitoring of temperature and oxygen saturation, antibiotic prophylaxis against opportunistic infections. Each detail matters because later we will lean on the movement. Data how far they travel per night. How speed spikes mark the beginning of a chase. How location clusters reveal den sites. In the early 1990s, triangulation yielded dozens of fixes per week. Modern collars gather a fix every 5 to 15 minutes, creating a high-resolution chronicle of daily life. That resolution revealed robust hunting success rates. Compared with other large carnivores, often 60 to 80% on targeted medium-sized antelope. Empirical anchor repeated across protected areas. The narrator widens the frame. What does it take to live by the run? Endurance hunting is an energy budget problem. Thermal imaging shows the heat-blooming musculature during a chase. The dog's long limbs and narrow torso offer mechanical efficiency. The pack's rotating front during a pursuit reduces individual fatigue. An emergent behavior documented through synchronized accelerometers, heart rates, rise and fall in a relay pattern. An elegant solution evolved in many cursorial hunters. But no, we're as socially explicit as in Lycaon. Cooperative pack structure is not just social theory. It's measurable survival. Pups, the genetic future, receive first priority at kills. A rule enforced through ritualized squeaks and submission postures. Non-breeding helpers regurgitate meat on cue. A behavior quantified by focal follows that tally provisioning. Events per pup per day. We step into genetics. Blood and hair samples move from field coolers to PCR machines. Mitochondrial haplotypes and nuclear microsatellites trace relatedness, dispersal, and effective population size. Results consistently show male-biased phyllometry and female-led dispersal, pattern that reduces inbreeding and repopulates. Landscapes if corridors remain open. Where fences and roads fracture habitat, dispersal breaks. We later show how fragmented subpopulations collapse when disease pressure spikes. A grim synergy predicted by metapopulation. Theory unverified by real outbreaks of rabies and canine distemper virus. In our first 5 minutes, we lay out 3 scientific pillars that will guide all 35 segments. 1 movement ecology GPS collars, accelerometers, to demography and behavior long-term observational datasets, den monitoring, and 3 molecular ecology genetics, disease diagnostics. The camera returns to the pack crossing an open pan at dusk. The sound of feet on dry grass, the low hook contact call, and a slow fade to black. The question posed is simple and testable across continents and species. Does cooperation scale survival? Dawn at a den. Pups tumble from a termite mound while sentinels scan. The breeding pair, often called alpha male and alpha female, are not tyrants. They're focal points in a consensus-driven society. Hierarchies in wild dogs and doles are flatter than in many canids, a claim borne out by how often subordinates initiate hunts and how food is distributed. We watch standardized ethograms in action, behaviors coded into time-stamped sequences, greeting ceremonies, squeals, tail wagging, Muzzle licking. Recruitment rallies before a hunt. Guard rotations at the den. Long-term sites in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Kenya, India, and Thailand have logged tens of thousands of such events. The numbers tell a pattern. Groups with stable helper cohorts fledge more pups. Groups that lose adults to snares, roads, or disease see pup survival crater. Physiology supports the social script. The film overlays heart rate telemetry as the pack gathers. Cortisol and oxytocin assays from non-invasive. Fecal samples add another layer. Stress is lowest when more helpers attend the den, and affiliative contact rises before a cooperative event. A pattern similar to pre-game huddles in human teams. This isn't anthropomorphism. It's a biochemical correlate of coordination. In one dataset, provisioning per pup tracks linearly with the number of prime-age helpers, an effect that persists across prey fluctuations. The inference is straightforward. Cooperation is a resource amplifier. We show the mechanics of long-distance hunting. GPS fixes converted into step lengths and turning. Angles demonstrate. A levy-like search when prey sign is low and a directed sprint when a target is selected. Packmates split, not chaotically, but by role. Some flank, others push. Infrared footage captures how dogs trade positions to keep. Heat loads manageable ear vasodilation, tongue extension, evaporative cooling, lung capacity and stride frequency. Data recorded from rehabilitated individuals indicate an endurance zone tuned to medium antelope speeds. Compare this with lions. Explosive acceleration, high failure rates, long rests. Painted dogs invert that curve. Moderate speed, high success, short handling times, and immediate redistribution of meat via regurgitation trains. Back at the den, we highlight communal nursing. Non-breeding females sometimes lactate. Hormonal triggers associated with pup distress calls have been proposed, and while causality remains debated, observers have repeatedly documented milk transfer from ants. Camera traps inside artificial den boxes show an assembly line of care food, grooming, parasite removal. Parasite loads ticks. Helminths are recorded per individual during immobilizations. Fecal floats quantify helminth ova, allowing comparisons between packs using different habitats. These health measures predict survival when a viral wave hits. Healthier, well-provisioned pups are more likely to seroconvert and live through a low-dose exposure. The segment closes with dispersal, the engine of gene flow. Using genotypes scats along game trails, researchers reconstruct ghost movements of all-female or all-male coalitions searching for mates. Corridors riparian strips, cattle paths. Even roadside verges become arteries of diversity. Where fences sever them, we see inbreeding coefficients climb and litter sizes fall. The visuals cut between satellite images and on the ground. Footage, a simple barbed wire fence to us, a population wall to them. Cooperation works, but it must be allowed to spread. We shift to Asia's forests. Sal antique in India, Dipterocarps in Southeast Asia, montane forests in the Himalaya, the dull reddish coat, white bib, black-tailed tip moves like a spark through the understory. If the African wild dog embodies open country pursuit, the doe represents forest precision. Packs are typically smaller, often 5 to 12. But the rules of cooperation echo. What sets Quone apart is its acoustic world. High-pitched whistles used as long-range contact calls that pierce dense vegetation. On-screen spectrograms show frequency bands, rising above the low-frequency clutter of the forest and elegant. Testable adaptation to sound transmission constraints. Hunting footage in dry deciduous forest captures dholes harrying a sambar deer, not by overwhelming force, but by persistent nips at the legs and flanks, a patterned harassment that drives prey into a stumble. Contrary to old myths, dholes are not indiscriminate killers. Prey profiles from scat analysis guard hares identified under microscopy. Bone fragment morphometrics. DNA metabucketing show a strong bias toward medium ungulates. Seasonal shifts are detectable. In lean times, more lagomorphs and wild piglets enter the diet. A classic functional response to prey availability. The science of coexistence appears here. Dholes share landscapes with tigers and leopards. Spatial modeling using camera trap occupancy and movement corridors, measured by least cost path analysis, reveals a mosaic. Dholes avoid prime tiger corridors during daylight and often hunt edges and secondary growth that big cats use less intensively. Kill site monitoring with cluster analysis of GPS. Data shows that dholes minimize carcass handling time, reducing kleptoparasitism risk. Where prey is abundant and cover dense, temporal partitioning hunting at different times further reduces conflict. These predictions from niche theory match measured activity. Curves from camera traps. Tigers peak at crepuscular to night. Dholes often show diurnal spikes, especially where hunting pressure on humans is low. Disease follows the same rules across continents. Serosurveys from scat and occasional. Blood draws for captured individuals. Test for canine distemper virus, rabies virus, parvovirus, and adenovirus. Outbreaks correlate with dog-human interfaces, villages at park edges, feral dog populations, garbage dumps. Vaccination campaigns for domestic dogs become dhole conservation strategies by proxy. The film shows field teams administering oral baits to community dogs, backed by outreach. Measurable outcomes include reduced seroprevalence in the wild and stabilized dhole packs, often recorded by the same camera traps that first flagged declines. Behaviorally, dholes echo the painted dog's empathy-coded care. Pups are prioritized at kills. Helpers regurgitate, but dholes innovate at dens too. They often select termite mounds or rock cavities with multiple exits, and, in some sites, rotate dens to minimize parasite buildup. A hypothesis supported by decreased tick loads in litters that rotate compared with those that don't. Genetic work, though less extensive than for Lycaon, still shows female biased dispersal patterns, a convergence toward the same solution of inbreeding avoidance. We end the segment with sound. The forest dims. A series of whistles rings out, climbing and falling. The spectrogram returns, translating song into science. Cooperation isn't just a social strategy. It is an information processing system, signals sent, received, acted upon. In the dhole's world, a good call can be the difference between a pup fed and a pack starving. Now to Australia's arid heart. where the dingoes outline upright ears. Brush tail cuts against red dunes and blue sky. For decades, the dingo was cast as pest or pariah. Yet some of the most influential ecological studies on trophic cascades come from this canid, where dingoes persist. Foxes and feral cats tend to be suppressed through interference, competition, and predation, where dingoes are excluded famously by thousands of kilometers of dog fence. Mesopredators explode, small mammals plummet, and vegetation structure shifts as herbivores respond to altered predation risk. This is not sentiment. It's replicated pattern, tested with paired exposure experiments, long-term monitoring, and before after control impact bocce designs. We walk the fence line, the physical embodiment of a hypothesis. On one side, tracks of kangaroos and emus cluster near water points. On the other, cat prints stitch the sand. Motion-triggered cameras quantify activity. Small mammal trapping grids, run seasonally, reveal abundance changes. Even vegetation transects show cascade echoes. Different shrub recruitment and ground cover when herbivore pressure is altered by predator presence. The landscape of fear becomes a mappable gradient. Dingo scent stations and playback experiments measuring behavioral responses of herbivores bind behavior to demography. Genetics enters the dingo debate through introgression. Are today's dingoes pure or heavily admixed with domestic dogs? Whole genome sequencing and SNP arrays map ancestry blocks, revealing regional variation in hybridization. Policy decisions hinge on these findings. The documentary does not adjudicate identity politics. It reports evidence. Some populations show low domestic introgression. Others show considerable mixing. From a functional ecology viewpoint, predation patterns and territorial behavior things that drive cascades seem retained across much of this spectrum, a point tested by comparing kill rates and home range sizes between populations with different ancestry scores. Dingo's social structure is flexible. Packs can be small family groups or looser associations, modulated by resource distribution. Denning occurs in rabbit warrens, rock crevices, or hollow logs. Pup rearing includes provisioning by multiple adults, and pup at kill priority is common. Recapitulating canid norms. Disease ecology again parallels other canids. Parvovirus and distemper exist, but Australia's insularity and management history shape exposure patterns. Camera traps near refuse sites reveal the risk conduit human food attracts dogs, which increases contact rates and disease spread. The segment uses Australia to punctuate a theme. Predators are not just numbers. They are processes. By filming across the dog fence's edges and overlaying 20 years of data, the story turns abstract trophic cascade theory into visible change. Wild dogs, whether painted or sandy, alter how other species behave, where they go, and whether they flourish. Turning predators off doesn't leave a system the same minus teeth. It changes the entire grammar of the place. A slow-motion sprint opens. A painted dog stretches to full stride. Forelimbs reaching, spine flexing, high-speed footage, and inertial measurement. Units IMS mounted on custom harnesses provide ground truth for the physics of pursuit. Acceleration curves show sustained. Submaximal exertion, think marathon. not 100-meter dash. Step frequency stabilizes around an efficient cadence. Stride length varies with terrain. The camera crosscuts with a treadmill test from a rehabilitation center. VOC. Measurements, lactate thresholds, and recovery times benchmark endurance. Dogs that participate more often in hunting show faster lactate clearance. Training effect measured in human athletes and here in a non-human endurance hunter. We then cut to the invisible enemy, heat. Thermal cameras bloom as core temperatures climb. Unlike cats, which often end a chase quickly or abandon it, wild dogs rely on evaporative cooling tongue, panting ear vasculature to keep heat in check. Field teams place ingestible temperature loggers in a few individuals, retrieved later in SCAT, documenting core temperature profiles across hunts. Data reveal rolling plateaus, not perilous spikes. Consistent with role swapping mid-chase, packs run smarter than any individual alone. Energetics scales the stakes. A daily energy budget for a pack is not simply calories per dog times number of dogs. It also includes transport costs, den attendance, anti-predator vigilance, and kleptoparasitism losses to lions or hyenas. Bioenergetic models, parameterized with measured kill masses, handling times, and provisioning rates, predict minimum hunt frequency to support pups. Field observation confirms the model. During the peak provisioning window, when pups are transitioning from milk to meat, packs often hunt twice per day. Accelerometer data show corresponding peaks in activity, and GPS cluster analysis marks quick kill-and-go patterns that minimize theft. The flip side is mortality. Snaring set for antelope or bushmeat kills wild dogs incidentally. Necropsy images show classic strangulation marks and limb constriction injuries. Conservation teams respond with snare, sweeps, and by fitting collars with VHF. Mortality sensors that trigger rapid response. Mortality causes are recorded systematically. Disease, vehicle strikes, interspecific conflict, predation by lions, snares, statistical survival models, Cox proportional hazards, reveal risk factors, packs, whose ranges cross busy roads, have higher hazard ratios. Years following drought see elevated mortality, likely via prey scarcity and riskier foraging. We close by recentering pups. The narrator reminds us that the evolutionary ledger is written in fledged litters, not daily kills. Den selection studies show a preference for sites, with good sightlines and multiple escape routes, and often near water or dry riverbeds used as travel corridors. Soil temperature loggers placed at den entrances. Record beneficial. Microclimate school by day, buffered by night. Parasite sampling shows lower tick burdens at dens with more sun exposure and sandy soils. One of the few architectural choices wild dogs can make against a tide of threats they cannot control. The camera lingers on a village edge, goats in a thorn boma, a child carrying water, a lean domestic dog trotting the road. This is where pathogens move. Canine distemper virus CDV and rabies virus are the archvillains in wild dog conservation, and their epidemiology is inseparable from people and dogs at protected area boundaries. The film walks through the science without melodrama. Diagnostics come first. In live captures, Distemper exposure is detected via serum neutralization assays. In non-invasive sampling, swabs and feces can detect viral RNA with RT-PCR. Rabies exposure is more complex. Seropositivity in living animals suggests past non-lethal exposure or vaccination. But most wild dogs aren't vaccinated. Outbreak reconstruction employs spatial temporal modeling. When did the first symptomatic animal appear? How did movement networks propagate exposure? And what role did domestic dogs play? Collars provide the network map. Village dog censuses and vaccination records overlay the human side. Vaccination is the most powerful intervention. Oral rabies vaccines ORV and parenteral vaccines for domestic dogs, administered in ring vaccination campaigns around parks, have reduced spillover in multiple landscapes. Conservation teams document vaccination coverage with GPS-tagged photos, then track subsequent seroprevalence changes in wildlife. In some regions, managers have vaccinated wild dogs directly, either during routine collaring or via oral baits, but this remains logistically challenging and policy sensitive. The film presents the risk calculus in clear terms. Vaccinating domestic dogs to 70% coverage can crash transmission chains. Below that, stochastic sparks still ignite outbreaks. We examine the metapopulation, subpopulations connected by dispersal corridors. In disease-free years, corridors rescue demographically weak packs. During outbreaks, those same corridors spread infection. It's a classic source-sink dynamic with a pathogen twist. Landscape models simulate what-if scenarios: close a corridor with fencing, open it with community conservancies, alter livestock grazing intensity, and predict impacts on both demography and disease. Managers then compare model predictions with reality after policy changes, turning adaptive management into an iterative experiment. Ethics and livelihoods matter. Filming in community conservancies shows how shared revenue from tourism or payment for ecosystem services aligns incentives to tolerate predators. The evidence here includes household surveys, changes in livestock depredation reports, and trends in retaliatory killings. Where coexistence programs provide night corrals, bomas, and herding support, conflict drops measurably. Wild dog survival rises, not by preaching, but by lowering the real costs of living with carnivores. The segment ends back at the village edge at dusk. A domestic dog passes the lens again, now wearing a small colored ear tag, vaccinated. The camera tilts to the horizon, where a painted dog pack ghosts along a tree line. The distance between them is less than a kilometer, and more than a policy, it is a set of choices, measured in syringes used, fences placed, meetings held, and trust earned. In the African savannah, the wild dog's greatest threat is not starvation or disease, but competition with fellow carnivores. Lions, spotted hyenas, and even leopards impose a constant pressure on packs. The evidence is clear. Telemetry data and direct observation reveal that lions are responsible for more adult wild dog deaths than any other single source of natural mortality. Studies conducted in Hwange and Kruger national parks show that up to 25% of wild dog mortality in monitored packs comes from lion encounters. Why? Lions target wild dogs as competitors, not prey, often killing but not consuming them. The film cuts to thermal drone footage of a tense nighttime standoff. A hyena clan approaches. A painted dog kill. Hyenas outnumber and outweigh wild dogs. But dogs are agile and can harass intruders. Field observations tally the outcomes of hundreds of encounters. Hyenas steal kills about 60% of the time, but wild dogs succeed in driving them off in the rest, especially when pack numbers are high. The narrative highlights pack size thresholds, mathematical models from predator-prey and predator-predator. Interaction theory predict minimum, group sizes for contest success, and observational data from Serengeti packs confirm them. We then shift to leopards. Though solitary, leopards pose a risk at dens, where vulnerable pups are hidden. Camera trap footage captures leopards investigating abandoned den sites. The dog's response is behavioral, frequent den shifting. A long-term study in Botswana documented up to 5 den moves per season, often triggered by predator detection events. Conflict isn't just immediate violence, it's ecological displacement. Satellite collar data from Kruger show wild dogs actively avoiding lion core areas, leading to reduced habitat access. This landscape of fear diminishes hunting opportunities and forces longer nightly movements. Yet this very pressure may select for cooperation and endurance. Hunting, when you cannot dominate, you must outmaneuver. The dog's strategy rapid kill and leave minimizes exposure to kleptoparasitism. The science concludes with niche partitioning, stable isotope analysis of hair samples from wild dogs, lions, and hyenas shows dietary overlap in prey species, but differences in prey size classes and hunting times. Wild dogs skew toward medium antelope, lions toward larger ungulates, and hyenas exploit carrion and mixed prey. This subtle separation enables coexistence, but only if enough prey exists to go around. Imagine standing in the dusk and hearing the chorus, squeaks, twitters, chirps, and the haunting who call. Wild dogs communicate constantly, and each vocalization carries social function. Ethological studies categorize over 20 distinct call types, from high-pitched twittering during greetings to long-range contact calls, detectable up to 2 kilometers in savannah conditions. Acoustic ecology research reveals fascinating adaptations. The hukola low frequency, owl-like sound travels efficiently across grasslands, allowing separated individuals to reunite. Playback experiments confirm its function. Solitary dogs hearing a who move rapidly toward the source. Similarly, rallying calls before hunts raise group arousal, with heart rate telemetry showing synchronized spikes in anticipation. But sound is only part of the code. Body posture, ear position, tail wagging, and muzzle licking form a visual lexicon. High-speed video analysis of greetings reveals nuanced hierarchies. Pups approach adults submissively, while subordinates lick the muzzles of dominance. Hormonal assays correlate these greetings with oxytocin spikes, paralleling bonding in primates. We expand the lens beyond Africa. In dholes, whistle calls carry through dense forests. Spectrogram studies demonstrate adaptation to high-frequency transmission above background insect noise. Dingoes, by contrast, produce complex howls resembling wolves, with distinct regional dialects mapped through spectrographic analysis. New Guinea's singing dogs produce extraordinary harmonic howls, rising and falling in airy sequences measured by bioacousticians as one of the most melodically structured calls in canids. Communication is survival. Pups beg by whining. Helpers respond with regurgitation. Guard dogs bark alarm at predators or humans. Cooperative hunting depends on rapid signal exchange turns, nips, and vocal cues directing pursuit. In experiments with captive packs, muted individuals caused breakdowns in coordination, underscoring the adaptive value of sound. The segment closes in the acoustic lab, where sonograms of whistles and whoos scroll across screens. To speak, the narrator whispers, is to survive together. Reproduction is the bottleneck of survival. The breeding pair of a wild dog pack monopolizes reproduction in most cases. Though subordinate breeding does occur, gestation lasts around 70 days. Births cluster at the start of the dry season, when hunting is easier and pup survival higher. Dens are critical. Radio collar data and camera trap monitoring of dozens of dens show repeated selection of old aardvark burrows, shaded termite mounds, and earthen banks near watercourses. Den temperatures are consistently cooler by day and warmer by night, buffering fragile neonates from extremes. A typical litter contains 8 to 10 pups, but litters of up to 20 have been documented. Pup mortality is high. Long-term data suggest only 50 to 60% survive their first year. The pack compensates with extraordinary care. Nursing is exclusive to the mother, but helpers regurgitate meat to pups as early as 3 weeks after emergence. Each regurgitation event carefully documented in ethograms represents both nutrition and social teaching. By 10 weeks, pups begin play hunts. They chase each other, mock ambush siblings, and practice prey-chasing behaviors. Ethologists code these behaviors as motor pattern rehearsal, a prelude to actual hunts. At 6 months, pups join the pack on real hunts, but rarely contribute to the kill. Survival hinges on pack stability. Longitudinal studies in the Okavango Delta show that packs with more than 5 helpers raise 2 to 3 times more pups than smaller groups. Genetic analyses confirm helpers are usually older siblings, sacrificing direct reproduction for indirect fitness skin selection in action. Pup dispersal occurs at 1.5 to 2 years, usually as female coalitions seeking unrelated males. This process spreads genes across landscapes, critical for avoiding inbreeding. Molecular markers confirm that dispersal maintains genetic diversity even in fragmented populations, and less barriers prevent movement. The segment closes with drone footage of pups bounding across grassland, ears too large for their heads, chasing one another under a vast sky. They are the future, but also the most fragile link. At 3,000 meters on the Ethiopian highlands lies the world's rarest canid, the Ethiopian Wolf Canis simensis. Once widespread, fewer than 600 remain today. The documentary ascends into the Bale Mountains, showing flame-colored wolves trotting through alpine meadows. Unlike the generalist painted dog, the Ethiopian wolf is a specialist. Its diet consists primarily of afro-pine rodents, giant mole rats, and grass rats. Foraging is solitary. Wolves stalk, pounce, and dig. Behavioral observation shows up to 90% of hunting time spent alone. Yet wolves still form social packs, centered around cooperative territory defense and pup raising. Genetic studies confirm close relation to gray wolves and coyotes, not African wild dogs. Whole genome sequencing reveals divergence around 100,000 years ago, likely as a gray wolf lineage colonized East Africa and adapted to high-altitude niches. Skull morphology shows elongation and reduced molars, reflecting specialization for small prey diets. Disease again haunts. Outbreaks of rabies and distemper in the 1990s and 2000s wiped out entire subpopulations. Intensive vaccination programs targeting both domestic dogs and wolves directly now protect some groups. Field veterinarians dart wolves and administer parenteral vaccines. One of the few cases where direct vaccination of wild canids has been systematically attempted. Territories average 6 to 12 square kilometers, defended against neighboring packs through scent marking and choral howling. Cooperative behavior centers on rearing pups, with helpers provisioning through regurgitation. Pup survival, however, is precarious, with high mortality from predation and disease. The Ethiopian wolf underscores an evolutionary lesson. Specialization yields efficiency but increases vulnerability. As afro-pine habitats shrink under climate change, the species faces a narrowing future. Conservation biologists monitor populations with genetic sampling, GPS collars, and camera traps. Each data point a lifeline to a fragile species. Fossils and ancient DNA tell us that wild dogs are not just present creatures, but evolutionary survivors. Lycaon pictus appears in the African fossil record at least 1.9 million years ago. Early specimens from Olduvai Gorge and South Africa show larger body size and heavier jaws, suggesting adaptation to Pleistocene megafauna. Molecular clocks estimate divergence of Lycaon from the Canis lineage around 2 million years ago. Unlike wolves, Lycaon evolved hypercarnivory enlarged slicing teeth, reduced crushing molars signaling a commitment to flesh. Comparative anatomy studies confirm this. Wild dogs lack the tooth versatility for omnivory that wolves retain. Archaeological sites across Africa occasionally yield wild dog remains associated with human activity. At Grotte des Pigeons in Morocco, painted dog teeth appear in later Stone Age deposits, possibly as ornaments. At sites in Kenya and Tanzania, wild dog bones intermingle with prey remains, suggesting opportunistic human-dog interactions. Ancient DNA from museum specimens adds to the picture. Sequencing reveals historical genetic diversity far greater than today's, supporting the hypothesis that recent declines are anthropogenic. The collapse is visible in the DNA, loss of alleles, increased relatedness, reduced effective population size. For dingoes, archaeology tells a migration story. Introduced to Australia around 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, likely by Austronesian seafarers, dingoes rapidly established across the continent. Remains in rock shelters confirm their integration into Aboriginal cultures as hunting partners. Spiritual symbols and companions. The segment emphasizes that wild dogs are both ancient survivors and living testaments to shifting human landscapes. Their bones, DNA, and myths anchor them in our shared past. We return to behavior. Why do wild dogs invest so heavily in non-breeding helpers? Evolutionary biology provides answers: kin selection and inclusive fitness. Hamilton's Rule B predicts that altruism evolves when the genetic relatedness R multiplied by the reproductive benefit B exceeds the cost C. Wild dogs are textbook evidence. Helpers often raise siblings, increasing indirect genetic success. But studies reveal nuance. In some cases, unrelated immigrants still help. Why? Reciprocal benefits. Helping today may secure future support or access to breeding when vacancies arise. Long-term pack. Monitoring shows that immigrant males who invest in pup provisioning gain greater breeding opportunities later. Empathy-like behaviors emerge. Injured dogs are fed and groomed by packmates. Observers document regurgitation to sick individuals, even those unable to hunt. Such behaviors cost the helper, but benefit group cohesion. Neurological parallels to human empathy are speculative, but hormonal data elevated oxytocin during cooperative acts suggest deep biological roots. We expand across species. Dholes, dingoes, Ethiopian wolves all show cooperative pup care. In comparative phylogenetics, cooperative breeding evolves in taxa with high juvenile dependency and unpredictable resources. Wild dogs hunting prey that is hard to catch but highly rewarding when caught fit this model. The segment closes philosophically. To survive as a pack, the narrator intones, is to make another's hunger your own. When you watch a wild dog pack cross a savannah plain, the movements look improvisational, yet beneath them lies measurable structure. Modern conservation relies on mapping these invisible roads. Since the 1990s, radio telemetry has given way to GPS collars, capable of transmitting positions every 5 to 15 minutes, combined with accelerometers and gyroscopes. These devices build fine-grained biographies of each dog. The film shows a glowing animation. Thousands of GPS points spiraling across the Okavango Delta. Researchers use spatial statistics, kernel density estimators, and Brownian bridge movement models to define home ranges and corridors. A 2017 study in Zimbabwe revealed that wild dog packs can travel more than 50 kilometers in a single night, with cumulative monthly ranges of up to 1,500 square kilometers. Drones add another layer. Thermal imaging at dawn locates den entrances invisible to the human eye. Drone swarms follow chases from above, capturing movement patterns that GPS alone cannot show. From this aerial vantage, it becomes clear how dogs fan out and reform, a ballet of pursuit. Space-use data feeds directly into conservation planning. Connectivity models simulate how dispersing females move through fragmented landscapes. Resistance surfaces, built from satellite imagery, assign costs to each land cover type. Open savanna is cheap. Farmland and fencing are costly. Least cost path analysis then predicts dispersal corridors. In practice, these models have been validated by real dispersal events documented with GPS, predicted routes often overlap observed ones. This spatial ecology has consequences. In Botswana, corridors identified by GPS were later formalized into wildlife management areas, ensuring safe passage. In contrast, in South Africa's fenced reserves, dispersal routes end abruptly at barriers, leading to inbreeding. Genetic data confirm model predictions. Fenced populations show higher homozygosity and lower effective population sizes. The segment closes on a sobering note. Space, the narrator whispers, is the bloodstream of survival. Where it clots, the body weakens. Savannas and forests are not static backdrops. They are dynamic, climate-sensitive systems. As global temperatures rise and rainfall patterns shift, wild dogs face new challenges. Telemetry and kill site. Data reveal that wild dogs prefer hunting in cooler hours, dawn and dusk. But climate change is extending hot periods. A 2020 study showed that in northern Botswana, wild dogs increasingly delay hunts until night to avoid heat stress. Night hunting reduces kleptoparasitism risk from lions, but also raises risks from injury in low light. Prey availability is also shifting. Climate-driven droughts reduce ungulate numbers, particularly medium antelope like impala, the dog's staple prey. Longitudinal prey surveys show population declines in drought years, forcing dogs to hunt smaller or riskier prey. Nutritional stress follows. Pup survival dips significantly after droughts, as provisioning falls short. Disease links to climate as well. Warmer temperatures and altered rainfall influence vector populations ticks. Mosquitoes that spread secondary pathogens. Climate-induced stress also weakens prey populations, increasing transmission of anthrax and bovine tuberculosis, which can spill into dogs indirectly through scavenging. Climate modeling predicts contraction of suitable wild dog habitat by 20 to 30% in the next 50 years if warming exceeds 2 degrees Celsius. Corridors linking subpopulations are likely to break under agricultural expansion, itself driven by shifting rainfall. Conservationists now use climate projections in management plans, modeling climate refugia, areas predicted to remain suitable despite change. Footage of parched savannas, bleached bones, and dusty pups grounds the data. The narrator summarizes, when the air itself becomes your enemy, endurance is not enough. The social life of wild dogs is often simplified to alpha pair and followers, but science reveals a far more democratic structure. Before hunts, packs perform rally ceremonies, greeting, circling, and vocalizations. A 2017 paper in Proceedings of the Royal Society B showed that hunt departures are decided by sneeze counts. When enough individuals sneeze during rallies, the group departs. Video analysis of rallies shows that dominant individuals sneezes way more, but subordinates can still influence decisions if enough join. This quorum-based system resembles democratic decision-making in primates, bees, and even human groups. Leadership is fluid. While the breeding pair often initiate hunts, GPS tracking reveals that different individuals lead, pursuit depending on terrain and prey. Young adults may scout, while experienced hunters orchestrate final kills. Hierarchies exist, but they are context-dependent. Decision-making extends to denning. When moving dens, packs show collective investigation of potential sites. Subordinates sniff and dig. Adults linger. Pups are shepherded. Den choice reflects consensus, not imposition. This flexible leadership is adaptive in unpredictable environments. Game theory models show that distributed decision-making minimizes error, risk compared with centralized authority, especially when prey distribution is patchy. Evolution has sculpted wild dogs into collective strategists. The film illustrates with an animation dogs as nodes, sneezes as signals, quorum thresholds lighting up. Even in the hunt, the narrator intones, democracy runs on breath. Across Africa and Asia, wild dogs now survive in human-dominated landscapes. The central question is coexistence. Can pastoralists, farmers, and predators share ground? Livestock depredation is a flashpoint, yet studies reveal that wild dogs are less responsible than often claimed. Scat analysis and kill monitoring show that livestock makes up a tiny fraction of wild dog diet typically, 5% compared with lions and hyenas. Misattribution often arises because wild dogs scavenge carcasses of livestock killed by disease or other predators. Nevertheless, conflict is real. Retaliatory killings by poisoning or spearing are documented across East Africa. Conservationists counter this with coexistence programs. In Kenya's Laikipia region, predator-friendly bomas protect livestock at night, reducing depredation. Economic incentives, tourism revenue sharing, payments for ecosystem services further shift perceptions. Household surveys demonstrate measurable attitude changes where communities see tangible benefits. Corridors again are vital. In Tanzania, Maasai pastoralists maintain traditional grazing routes that double as dispersal corridors. Participatory mapping projects integrate community knowledge into GIS planning, identifying safe pathways for dogs and livestock alike. In India, dhole conservation follows similar principles. Human-dhole conflict is rarer, but habitat loss from plantations and infrastructure threatens connectivity. Camera traps reveal dholes adapting to secondary forests and even plantations, provided prey persists. The segment closes with a community meeting, elders, children, rangers, and biologists in dialogue. Conservation is not just about animals, but about trust, livelihoods, and shared landscapes. Hunting dominates the imagination, but most of a wild dog's life is spent resting. Energy budgets demand it. After high-intensity hunts, recovery is essential. GPS and accelerometer data show clear diurnal patterns, active in early, morning and late afternoon, resting in midday heat. Thermal imaging captures packs sprawled in shade, panting lightly. But rest is not uniform. Sentinels remain vigilant. Ears twitching, heads lifting at distant sounds. Studies of resting behavior reveal rotation. Different individuals take sentinel roles, ensuring vigilance without exhausting a few. Heart rate loggers indicate lighter sleep phases for sentinels, compared with deep rest for others. This division of labor mirrors patterns in human hunter-gatherers, where group vigilance ensures security. Resting sites are chosen strategically. Packs prefer shaded thickets or termite mounds with visibility. Camera trap surveys show site reuse across seasons. Parasite risk influences choices too. Sandy, sun-exposed resting sites reduce tick loads compared with moist, shaded areas. Energy balance calculations integrate resting time, hunt success, provisioning, and pup growth. Models show that even minor increases in disturbance human presence. Vehicle traffic can disrupt rest, lowering fitness. Dogs disturbed repeatedly move to suboptimal sites, increasing energetic costs. Footage of pups dozing in a pile, twitching as they dream, ends the segment. Rest, the narrator whispers, is not absence of life, but its foundation. Not all threats are lions or snares. Many are microscopic. Parasite sticks, helminths, protozoa siphon energy and weaken resilience. Tick infestations are common in wild dogs. Field immobilizations allow counts and species identification. Heavy infestations correlate with anemia and pup mortality. Tick-borne pathogens, such as Babesia and Ehrlichia, have been detected in blood smears and PCR assays. Outbreaks can cause sudden pup deaths. Intestinal parasites, hookworms, whipworms, tapeworms are identified through fecal flotation and molecular barcoding. Prevalence varies by habitat. Wetter areas show higher parasite loads. Nutritional stress exacerbates impacts, as malnourished pups are less able to tolerate parasite burdens. Yet wild dogs fight back. Grooming is not just social, it removes ticks. Helpers often lick pups intensively, reducing parasite load. Sunbathing at den entrances also desiccates ticks. These behaviors represent cultural defenses against microscopic enemies. Conservation medicine addresses parasites indirectly by ensuring high prey availability and minimizing disease outbreaks. Managers buffer packs against parasite stress. Vaccination programs against distemper and rabies reduce co-infections, which often worsen parasite impacts. The segment closes on a macro lens shot, a tick crawling across a pup's fur, juxtaposed with the pup's wide eyes. The narrator reflects, not all battles are visible. Some are fought in blood unseen. Behind every field observation lies a model, a set of equations that help conservationists predict the fate of wild dog populations. One of the most influential is metapopulation theory, which frames wild dogs not as a single population, but as a network of subpopulations connected by dispersal. In southern Africa, long-term monitoring across Kruger, Wange, and Okavango has revealed the mechanics. Packs blink in and out like nodes on a map. Some disappear after disease outbreaks. Others thrive. Dispersers, typically young females, move between nodes, receding empty patches. Ecologists feed this data into stochastic models that simulate extinction and recodify. The models show thresholds. If connectivity falls below a certain level, corridors cut by roads, fences, or farms, the system tips. Local extinctions accumulate faster than recolonizations. This is not theoretical. South Africa's Lalu Imfolozi Park saw wild dogs vanish in the 1980s due to fragmentation. Only through reintroductions has the metapopulation been partially restored. Population viability analyzers PVA expand the toolset by inputting survival rates, reproductive output, and mortality causes. PVAs predict extinction risk over 50 or 100 years. For painted dogs, Disease frequency is the most sensitive variable. A single distemper outbreak can have pack numbers. PVAs reveal that even moderate increases in vaccination of domestic dogs can slash extinction risk. The mathematics extend further. Energetics models quantify prey needs. An adult requires about 3 to 5 kilograms of meat daily. Pups more relative to body mass. Multiply by pack size, overlay hunting success rates, and managers can estimate carrying capacity. In areas where prey numbers fall below thresholds, wild dog populations decline even if no other threats exist. The narrator closes. Numbers are not abstractions. They are survival's grammar predicting weather pause. Still run across tomorrow's grass. The wild dog hunt is among the most studied cooperative predation events in nature. Yet the science shows it is neither chaotic nor rigid. It is flexible strategy shaped by terrain and prey. High-speed drone footage captures a hunt of impala in the Okavango. The pack fans out, flanking the herd. One dog flushes, others cut escape routes. Accelerometer collars reveal bursts of speed alternating with rests, suggesting role rotation. Biologists describe this as a relay. Hunt. Dogs trade fatigue like runners in a marathon. Prey choice is not random. Kill site data, verified with prey remains, show strong preferences for medium-sized antelope impala. Kudu calves, Thompson's gazelle. This reflects optimal foraging theory. Prey large enough to feed the pack, but small enough to be subdued quickly. Larger prey, like wildebeest, are riskier. Smaller prey provide insufficient return. Terrain matters. In open grassland, hunts stretch for kilometers. In woodlands, ambushes are shorter, more chaotic. A 2015 study in Tanzania used GPS collars to analyze chase lengths. Median 1.5 kilometers in woodland, 4 to 5 kilometers in open plains. Success rates, however, remained high, often 60 to 70%, compared to 15 to 30% for lions. Roles emerge. Some individuals specialize as chasers, others as cutters. Over years of observation, certain dogs repeatedly occupy similar roles. Yet the pack adapts when members die or disperse. This redundancy ensures resilience. Hunting success sustains not just energy, but social bonds. Pups are fed first, then the breeding female, then helpers. Regurgitation chains extend benefit even to those left at the den. Hunting is less about individual triumph and more about collective gain. The segment ends with a time lapse of vultures descending on leftovers. A reminder that the wild dog's hunt fuels an entire scavenger guild. In much of their former range, wild dogs vanished under pressure from habitat loss, persecution, and disease. Reintroduction has become a cornerstone of conservation strategy. South Africa provides the prime example. By the late 20th century, wild dogs survived only in Kruger. Conservationists launched a meta-population management plan, reintroducing packs into smaller reserves. This required careful science, genetic analyses to avoid inbreeding, veterinary screenings for disease, and social structuring to form stable packs. One technique is bonding. Captive enclosures bring together unrelated males and females. Over weeks, the groups establish social cohesion. Released as bonded packs, Their survival rates are higher than if individuals were released alone. Field monitoring shows that bonded packs hunt effectively within days of release. Reintroduction success is measured by survival, reproduction, and dispersal. Data from South Africa reveal that reintroduced populations now number several hundred individuals across reserves, effectively functioning as a managed metapopulation. Genetic sampling confirms maintained diversity through occasional translocations between reserves. Challenges remain. Packs often break out of fenced reserves, encountering livestock and risking persecution. Managers respond with recapture and relocation. Disease introduction from domestic dogs is another constant threat, requiring vaccination protocols. Reintroduction is not just biology, it is politics and community buy-in. Reserve managers, local communities, and tourism operators must align. The film shows a release, gates opening, dogs streaming into tall grass. The narrator reflects, to reintroduce is to stitch back a torn page of life's book. Not all knowledge of wild dogs comes from science. Across cultures, they appear in stories, myths, and folklore. Among some African communities, painted dogs were once considered omens. In Zimbabwe, oral traditions describe them as messengers of the bush. Creatures whose teamwork reflected moral lessons about cooperation. Elders tell of dogs leading hunters to game, echoing their real-world prowess. Dingoes hold deep cultural significance in Aboriginal Australia. Dreamtime stories often portray dingoes as ancestral beings, guides or tricksters. Rock art in Arnhem Land depicts dingo forms over 3,000 years old. Ethnographic records show that Aboriginal peoples lived alongside dingoes, sometimes raising pups as companions, releasing them back when grown. In India, dholes appear in folklore less prominently, but colonial accounts often demonized them as vermin, exaggerating their hunting power. Modern conservation seeks to overturn these narratives, restoring them as vital native carnivores. Even in Europe, fossil remains of Lycaon pictus have been found, inspiring speculation that ancient peoples once encountered painted wolves. Could they have entered myth? Archaeologists debate whether cave paintings in Spain depict wild dogs or wolves. A tantalizing ambiguity. These cultural echoes remind us that wild dogs are not only biological entities but symbolic presences. Their cooperative behavior resonates with human values of family, loyalty, and collective strength. The segment closes with voices chanting in an Aboriginal ceremony, blending with the distant chorus of dingo howls. Reproduction in wild dogs is both cooperative and competitive. Typically, only the dominant pair breeds, but genetic analyses sometimes reveal multiple fathers. Microsatellite and SNP genotyping confirm occasional subordinate breeding. Though suppression mechanisms, behavioral harassment, food denial keep it rare, estrus occurs once annually. Females come into heat for only a few days. Courtship is conspicuous. Males follow females closely, licking and whining. Copulation is prolonged, with the copulatory tie lasting up to 90 minutes, ensuring fertilization and discouraging rival matings. Litter sizes are among the largest of any canid, averaging 8 to 10. But up to 20 pups documented. Large litters are adaptive, with high pup mortality, Producing more increases the chance some survive. Yet this requires intense pack support. Genetic studies track paternity. In some packs, subordinate males sire pups, but breeding females often suppress other females hormonally, possibly through pheromonal cues. Non-breeding females may experience pseudo-pregnancies, producing milk but not offspring. This aids communal care. In dholes, reproductive suppression is even stricter. Only the alpha pair breeds. Dingoes show more flexibility, with multiple females breeding in larger groups. Ethiopian wolves, specialized rodent hunters, also maintain dominant pair breeding, but with more frequent subordinate participation. The genetic outcome is clear. Wild dogs rely on cooperation to raise supersized litters, but cooperation itself is stabilized by reproductive skew. Evolution balances tension between individual reproduction and collective success. Behind fieldwork lies the lab, where blood, hair, and scat samples become data. Conservation genetics is central to wild dog survival. Mitochondrial DNA, microsatellites, and whole genome sequencing reveal population structure. Analyzers show strong differentiation between East, Southern, and West African wild dogs, reflecting historical fragmentation. Effective population size estimates confirm severe recent declines genetic, bottlenecks from human persecution and habitat loss. Forensic genetics also aids law enforcement. When wild dogs are killed in snares, tissue samples can confirm species identity, sometimes even individual identity. DNA databases allow matches to known packs, supporting anti-poaching prosecutions. Non-invasive sampling scat DNA has revolutionized monitoring. Scats collected along trails yield genotypes, enabling identification of individuals without capture, combined with spatial mapping. This produces population estimates accurate enough for management decisions. Disease surveillance uses PCR and ELISA assays to detect viral and bacterial pathogens. In some programs, portable field labs allow real-time screening of rabies or distemper exposure, guiding vaccination responses. The future is genomic. Conservationists now use genome-wide data to predict inbreeding depression risks, identifying at-risk gene regions, assisted gene flow translocating individuals from genetically diverse populations is guided by this data. The segment closes with lab technicians pipetting DNA, overlaid with field footage of packs. The message, every scat, every hair, is a chapter of survival written in code. For decades, cognition research focused on primates and domestic dogs. Only recently have scientists begun probing the minds of wild canids like painted wolves, dholes, and dingoes. Field experiments demonstrate remarkable problem solving. In Botswana, researchers presented packs with puzzle boxes containing meat. Wild dogs quickly coordinated, while some distracted or pawed at the box. Others exploited gaps. Their success rate was higher than that of hyenas in the same trials, suggesting advanced cooperative problem solving. Memory plays a key role in hunting. GPS data shows that packs repeatedly revisit areas of high prey density at intervals, matching ungulate migration cycles. This implies spatial memory extending beyond daily ranges. Controlled experiments in semi-wild Enclosures confirm that wild dogs remember food locations days after hiding. Social cognition is perhaps most striking. Dogs recognize individual packmates, voices, playback experiments of who. Calls elicit stronger responses when calls come from familiar individuals versus strangers. They also show rudimentary theory of mind. In experiments, dogs adjusted behavior based on whether packmates could see prey, suggesting awareness of others' knowledge states. Domestication studies compare dingoes with domestic dogs. Dingoes outperform pet dogs in some independent problem-solving tasks, but are less responsive to human, pointing gestures reflecting different evolutionary pressures. Dingoes live between the wild and the human sphere, their cognition shaped by both. The narrator reflects: to hunt in synchrony, to guard pups, to disperse requires memory, recognition, and foresight. The wild dog's intelligence is written not in tricks, but in survival. Death is an ever-present part of wild dog research. Conservationists learn as much from the dead as from the living. Necropsy, the animal equivalent of autopsy, reveals mortality causes. In Zimbabwe, systematic necropsies of wild dogs killed by snares, vehicles, and disease documented key threats. Snares leave strangulation marks or severed limbs. Vehicle strikes fracture skulls and spines. Disease deaths show pneumonia, encephalitis, or emaciation. Mortality data feed into survival curves. Studies show average life expectancy of 3 to 4 years in the wild. Though individuals may live up to 10, pups suffer the highest mortality, often exceeding 50% before adulthood. Predation accounts for significant deaths: lions and hyenas killing adults and pups. Disease spikes cause catastrophic losses. In 1991, a rabies outbreak in Tanzania's Serengeti wiped out nearly the entire wild dog population. Accidents also matter. Dens flood during heavy rains, drowning pups. Fires sweep through, forcing packs to relocate. Collisions with livestock fences cause injuries and deaths. Conservation teams respond by cataloging every carcass. GPS-collared dogs with mortality sensors help retrieve bodies quickly for necropsy. Findings shape interventions, targeted anti-snare patrols, road signs at hotspots, vaccination campaigns where disease is implicated. The camera lingers on skulls laid out on a research table, each labeled with cause of death. Every death, the narrator says, is a data point in survival's equation. Dispersal is the wild dog's way of weaving fragmented landscapes into a whole. Young adults, usually females in painted dogs and males in Ethiopian wolves, leave their natal packs in groups. GPS collars reveal astonishing journeys. In Botswana, dispersing female coalitions have traveled over 250 kilometers, crossing rivers, cattle farms, and roads. Few survive, but those that do find unrelated males and found new packs. Genetic studies show these dispersal events are vital. They refresh gene pools and reduce inbreeding. Dispersal is risky. Mortality rates for dispersers exceed 70%. They are more likely to be snared, shot, or starve. Yet evolution has embedded dispersal as essential. Packs that retain offspring suffer inbreeding. depression documented as smaller litters, reduced pup survival, and higher disease susceptibility. Dispersal also drives recodify. In Tanzania's Selous Reserve, dispersers re-established wild dog presence in areas where packs had vanished. Camera traps captured new coalitions forming, validating metapopulation models. The film dramatizes dispersal with animations, glowing lines radiating from dens, many fading into darkness, a few merging into new clusters. Most do not survive, the narrator whispers, but those few write the future of their kind. Beyond GPS and genetics, sound itself has become a monitoring tool. Ecoacoustics uses automated recording devices to track wild dogs and other species through their vocalizations. In Kenya, researchers deployed acoustic sensors across conservancies, algorithms trained on wild dog who calls detected presence even when direct sightings were rare. This method expanded monitoring capacity at low cost, especially in dense bush where visibility is limited. Acoustics also reveal stress. Call structure changes when packs are disturbed, higher pitch, faster repetition. Machine learning models can flag these stress calls, offering a non-invasive way to measure human impact. Dingoes, with their distinctive howls, are mapped similarly. In Australia, ecoacoustic networks help track dingo density and movement across vast deserts. Singing dogs of New Guinea, once thought extinct in the wild, were rediscovered partly through acoustic detection of their unique harmonic howls. Soundscapes also show ecological health. Areas rich in biodiversity produce layered acoustic signatures. Where wild dogs disappear, silence deepens. By analyzing these patterns, researchers gauge ecosystem change. The segment ends with a nighttime chorus, distant who, calls echoing across a valley, recorded by a solar-powered acoustic station. Technology, once intrusive, has become an ally of listening. Wild dogs are not only threatened by disease, they are part of a broader One Health web linking humans, livestock, and wildlife. Rabies and canine distemper move between domestic dogs and wild dogs, but spillovers flow in both directions. In rare cases, wild carnivores have transmitted rabies back to domestic dogs, creating a cycle that threatens human health. Bovine tuberculosis (BTB), common in ungulates, can infect wild dogs indirectly through scavenging. Necropsies have found lesions consistent with BTB in painted dogs from Kruger. Though not a major mortality driver yet, it poses risk to both conservation and agriculture. Parasite overlaps also matter. Ticks feeding on both livestock and wild dogs transmit Babesia and Ehrlichia, diseases affecting cattle health. This creates shared economic and ecological stakes. Protecting wild dogs from disease also benefits livestock. One Health programs integrate these links. In Tanzania, vaccination campaigns for domestic dogs against rabies have reduced human rabies cases dramatically while protecting wild dogs. Public health, veterinary, and conservation teams coordinate, demonstrating that species survival and human well-being align. The film cuts to a mobile veterinary clinic in a village. Syringes, coolers of vaccine, children holding their dogs. The narrator reflects the health of wild dogs, cattle, and children are strands of one fabric. tear one, and all unravel. Conservation enters the digital frontier with artificial intelligence. Machine learning is now applied to every layer of wild dog research. Camera traps generate millions of images. AI models trained on wild dog morphology filter images automatically, freeing researchers from manual sorting. Accuracy now exceeds 95%, enabling near real-time monitoring. GPS and accelerometer data are fed into predictive models. Deep learning algorithms detect hunting, resting, and dispersal behaviors from raw data, flagging anomalies that may indicate injury or mortality. Conservation teams receive alerts within hours. AI also supports conflict mitigation. Predictive models map likely livestock depredation, events based on wild dog movement, and village patterns. Communities receive alerts, allowing herders to secure stock before risk peaks. Early trials in Kenya and India show promising reductions in conflict. Climate simulations enhanced by AI predict habitat suitability shifts. By integrating remote sensing, land use, and climate models, researchers generate high-resolution forecasts of where corridors must be protected to ensure long-term survival. The film ends with a split screen on one side, glowing data points scrolling across a computer screen. On the other, a pack trotting under the stars. The future of wild dogs, the narrator whispers, is written both in code and in paw prints. Predators don't just kill, they change how prey live. This is called the ecology of fear, and wild dogs are central actors. Studies in Tanzania's Serengeti show that impalas alter grazing patterns in areas frequently used by wild dog packs. GPS-collared impalas reduce time spent in open areas, where dogs are efficient chasers, shifting to denser thickets. Camera traps confirm higher vigilance in these zones. More head-up scanning, less feeding. This behavior cascades. Vegetation surveys reveal taller grass and denser shrubs in areas where impalas avoid feeding due to wild dog presence. The effect mirrors classic wolf-elk studies in Yellowstone. Predators structure landscapes not only through consumption, but through fear. Experimental playback of wild dog calls strengthens the evidence. In South Africa, when impalas hear who calls, they immediately move to cover, cutting grazing bouts short. Stress hormones measured in dung glucocorticoid metabolites spike after exposure. Prey adaptation has evolutionary consequences. Antelope calves born during peak. Wild dog activity are more agile and exhibit earlier group integration. Natural selection sharpens prey to the predator's edge. The segment closes with sweeping drone footage of grassland, prey scattered at the margins. A pack of painted wolves trotting confidently across the open. The narrator reflects, they shape the world not only with teeth, but with the shadow of pursuit. Though the wild is their true stage, wild dogs also live in captivity in zoos, research centers, and breeding programs. Captive populations serve as genetic reservoirs and educational ambassadors, but they raise ethical and scientific questions. Captive breeding is challenging. Packs are prone to stress in artificial enclosures, and aggression can erupt if space is insufficient. To mitigate this, modern zoos design large, naturalistic habitats that allow running, digging, and pack interaction. Enclosure size strongly correlates with reduced stress behaviors, as confirmed by cortisol levels in fecal samples. Reproduction is managed through studbooks, coordinated by organizations like the European Endangered Species Programme EP. Genetic analysis guides pairings to maximize diversity. Some zoos practice contraceptive management to prevent surplus pups, while retaining social stability. Research opportunities in captivity are unique. Controlled experiments on cognition, communication, and physiology are possible here in ways not feasible in the wild. For example, heart rate telemetry during greeting rituals in zoo. Packs helped confirm oxytocin-mediated bonding behaviors. Captive healthcare also provides insights into disease. Veterinary monitoring has documented susceptibility to distemper and parvovirus, shaping vaccine protocols later applied in the field. Yet captivity is not conservation alone. Critics argue it risks reducing the public's sense of urgency for in situ protection. Supporters counter that zoos fund fieldwork and inspire empathy. The film presents both perspectives, leaving viewers with an ethical question. Do these fences save them, or remind us what freedom costs? To understand wild dogs, scientists compare them with their canid cousins worldwide. Grey wolves Canis lupus share cooperative hunting and pack living, but differ in scale and strategy. Wolves often tackle larger prey moose, elk using strength and stamina. Wild dogs, lighter and swifter, specialize in medium prey and endurance. Wolves display stronger dominance hierarchies. Wild dogs rely more on consensus. Coyotes Canis latrans are opportunists, thriving in North America's human-dominated landscapes. Unlike wild dogs, coyotes show remarkable flexibility in diet rodents. Fruit, garbage. Their adaptability has enabled population booms where wild dogs have collapsed. Comparative studies highlight ecological specialization as both strength and vulnerability. Jackals represent another contrast. Smaller, often monogamous or in small groups. Jackals scavenge more and hunt less cooperatively. Stable isotope analyses confirm higher reliance on carrion compared with wild dogs. Yet jackals share some cooperative behaviors: pup feeding, pair bonding demonstrating convergent strategies across body sizes. These comparisons illuminate evolutionary trade-offs. The wild dog's specialization in cooperation and hypercarnivory grants hunting efficiency, but reduces flexibility under change. Wolves adapt to new prey. Coyotes thrive in cities. Jackals scavenge across habitats. Painted wolves, in contrast, need space, numbers, and prey abundance. The segment closes with a montage. Wolves in snowy forests. Coyotes in urban alleys, jackals at carrion, wild dogs in golden savannah. Each species, the narrator whispers, is a different solution to survival's equation. The survival of wild dogs depends not only on science, but on politics, economics, and people's choices. Ecotourism plays a major role. In Botswana and Zimbabwe, lodges market painted dog sightings as rare treasures. Each pack becomes a revenue source for local communities. Studies show that villages near ecotourism hubs have higher tolerance for predators, as income offsets costs. Policy is equally crucial. Internationally, Wild dogs are listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. National legislation varies. In some countries, they receive strict protection. In others, they remain persecuted. Transboundary parks such as the Kavango's Zambezi, Transfrontier Conservation Area embody regional cooperation, allowing dogs to roam across borders. Funding shapes futures. Conservation NGOs run anti-snare patrols, vaccination drives, and education programs. Their reports track measurable outcomes: increased pup survival, reduced poaching, community engagement. Yet global challenges loom. Infrastructure development, roads, railways, pipelines fractures habitats. Conservationists advocate for wildlife crossings, corridor zoning, and environmental impact assessments. Data from GPS collars has influenced road placement in East Africa, proving that science can inform policy. The narrator reminds viewers, these dogs cannot vote, cannot lobby, cannot buy land. Their future rests on human choices on whether cooperation is our strategy tool. The final segment draws together every thread: biology, culture, conservation into one closing chorus. Dawn rises over the Okavango. A pack emerges from the reeds, pups bounding, adults trotting information. Their bodies carry to million years of evolution. Their society encoded in genes and rituals. Every behavior, the greeting squeak, the regurgitation, the sneeze that starts a hunt, is a testament to cooperation. We cut across continents, doles whistling in Indian forests, dingoes howling at a desert moon, Ethiopian wolves silhouetted on alpine meadows. Each species tells the same story in a different accent: survival through togetherness. Scientists appear briefly tracking collars, pipetting DNA, analyzing spectrograms. Communities appear to vaccinating dogs, guarding livestock, welcoming tourists. Conservation is shown not as isolated heroics, but as collective effort. The narrator closes. They are called painted wolves, whistling hunters, desert singers, mountain flames. Whatever the name, their story is ours, for they teach us that no one survives alone. To endure, one must belong to a pack, to a landscape, to the living fabric of the earth. If we choose cooperation, as they have, the chorus will continue. If not, silence will fall where songs once carried. The future is still unwritten. As dusk falls, the camera lingers on the glowing eyes of a pack, fading into darkness. Then one last sound, the rising, haunting call of wild dogs echoing into night.